Welcome. My name is Scott. And I'm joined today by Nathalie Gevinti. And so this is a bit of an experiment as well. This is a pilot sort of lunch and learn type session where it's lunchtime. Let's have some conversations about, I guess, different ideas or perspectives that perhaps help us broaden some of our thinking, whether that's personal, whether that's business, whether that's the future that we're building into. And I thought it'd be interesting to bring different people on board and just talk about some of these different ideas, because there is lunch and learn that's in the workplace, but given now that we have the wonder of technology, let's try something like this live. So that's me, and that's sort of why I'm doing this, and it is a bit of an experiment. Nathalie, can you please tell everyone who's watching a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Nathalie Gevinti. I'm very impressed with your pronunciation. That was perfect, Scott. Well done. So I'm a spiritual and well-being mentor. I've been an NLP practitioner and coach for over half a decade now, and I specialize in the neurological connections that create success. So I help people achieve their goals, which are not necessarily, I want to lose weight or I want this career. It could just be, I want to feel happier. I want to feel more peace. I want to have more calm. So whatever it is, there are ways, in our brain. So there is a part of it that's a little bit maybe mystical for some people. And I just like to think about it that just science hasn't always caught up, but science has done a lot of progress, and a lot of the things we're doing, even meditation, is actually backed up by a lot of measurement on the brain activities and so forth and so forth. So,
and I think it's definitely something that is of real importance at the moment. I think if we know this lockdown is impacting a lot of people at a mental health level. And it can be tough, and it's complex. I think that's the most important part of it for me, is understanding that it is complex and that there can be a lot of different solutions for different people as well. And so on that, I invited you on because I thought it'd be really great to talk about a topic that has appeared recently, or in my feed. I know this isn't a new topic, but it's appeared in my feed, and I thought I'd discuss this, right? Which is the idea of toxic positivity. So toxic positivity is the idea that, we can lift ourselves up. If we're in a negative space at the moment, that we can lift ourselves up just by having positive vibes or just by thinking about positivity. And I think this is an interesting discussion point, specifically because we're in this environment at the moment where everyone is a little bit negative, right? Or we can't help but be surrounded by a bit of negativity. And so I remember saying a few weeks back that I'm a big supporter of that idea of it is okay not to be okay. And so when we have that headspace, then to have a lot of other voices coming by saying just believe in yourself or just be positive and all those types of things, there can sometimes be there can be a gap there. So my first question for you is, what do you think about this concept of toxic positivity?
I think it comes from so it's interesting you brought that up, because I hadn't heard the term toxic positivity, but when we had a chat about it, I realized it corresponded with something that have come to me recently, is that we've got two types of emotions, and there are some emotions that need to be dealt with, and some emotions that we just need to have a better way of thinking to get rid of them. And the art is first to label our emotions correctly, and then to decide in which basket those emotions are going to be. So, you have emotions like grief or sadness. And from my experience, these are emotions that we try to sweep under the carpet, but actually need to be faced, and we need to go there. We need to, really have almost a conversation with ourselves. Now, there are ways to do that that are also going to protect yourself, because it can be it can be a downward spiral if you don't do it with the proper help around it. For my part, these were emotions that I never allowed myself to go there, because I was scared that I would never come back. These were emotions that really scared me, and I also felt a bit of a coach and happy. And well, if I let myself feel this, then I'm failing. I'm not being a good role model. And
so that's
I was lucky to.
sorry to interrupt there, because I thought what you've just pointed out was just such an interesting point, that you are a well-being coach, you're a mindfulness coach, and you teach this type of stuff. And your opening message was about positivity, but as you said, there was almost within yourself, there was an element of potentially of this toxic positivity. You weren't letting yourself feel negative because you didn't feel like you were allowed to, because you wanted to be a role model. I think that's such a fascinating dichotomy there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also really part of my growth as a coach, because what happened is that I went there, about a few months ago. I went there. Now, the way I did it is it's not too sort of complicated, but I observed myself feeling the feelings. So we call that a disassociation, which means that I wasn't in the feeling with that risk of sort of never coming back and really feeling, hey Diana, great to have you on the call, with this feeling of oh my God, how am I going to get out? So I observed myself feeling the feelings, and that allowed me to go really deep in there. And by doing that, two things happened that were quite amazing, actually. First is by going so deep in, I managed then to also have higher emotions. Right? So you can't have one without the other. By allowing myself to feel really down and really go there without any fear, a few weeks later, I realized that I was able to achieve some really high happiness emotion that I had maybe not reached before. So that was really, really important to me. The other thing that was important is that it's given me a greater understanding of other people feeling those feelings. Because I had a bit of a disconnect of, I don't understand what it feels like to feel that. I don't understand what it feels like to be in that space. And I think that's where also the toxic positivity comes from. And I think it's more coming from we want to be good and we want to be helpful, but sometimes we stumble a little bit. And when we say to people, come on, see the good things and find the gold and find the gift in what's happening there, we're just skipping ahead. It actually reminds me of an experience I had in hospital, where they were after a surgery, they were removing something and it was really hurting me. And I said, I hope this will be over fast. In my head, I meant go slow, but I can't wait for this to be over. And she just ripped the Band-Aid basically. And I went, wow. And I think that's what we do. We already think about just go better, but we forget to tell to people, but you have a journey to go to get there. We're not, so people are like, oh, I need to feel better. I need to snap out of my sadness or my grief or whatever it is. And the other thing is that there are some emotions where you can do that. And it's about, noticing. If you go into overwhelm or if you're going into disappointment, these aren't things you need to dwell on and face. It's your thinking that's bringing that. You just need to change the way you think. So when somebody is depressed or grieving and you tell them just change the way you think, you're not helping at all.
No, I think that's exactly it. Like, I think there's nothing worse sometimes when, if I'm feeling depressed, you don't tell someone who's feeling depressed, just be happy. Like, that doesn't work. And obviously that's a massive simplification of it. But the idea of, like you said, sitting in the grief, I think is really important. Like, two things come to mind when we were talking about it. I think it was last week I put out this video and I talk about the 5 stages of grief. And so I think what we're talking about with some of that positivity mindset is in some ways right at the end is the acceptance stage. And it's being aware that, for all of us, because we've been going through this cycle of grief, whether that's a loss of hope, loss of freedom, loss of purpose, loss of our roles, loss of traction and momentum, we have to go through periods where it's kind of like, I feel down, and I feel depressed. And whilst this is, I'm sharing quite personally, whilst I can adopt a mindset of positivity, sometimes, if I were to be brutally honest, sometimes there are points where I feel like I'm doing it to be able to sweep negative emotions under the carpet. Like if I just sit and say, yeah, I can be positive, it doesn't necessarily, like, it's still a pile of mess that's sitting under a carpet. So I really like what you're saying, which is about sitting in that grief. But to then fit that onto some of the conversations that we have, especially, in what we see on social media and what the messages that were put out, where just meditate can help with a mindset, or just doing yoga can help your mindset, or just going for a walk can help you. These are all true, but I wonder if this is what contributes to toxic positivity, that those are the messages that we can say. It's harder sometimes to be able to say, today's just a terrible day, and I feel bad about today.
Yeah, and you totally agree. And 2 points came to mind when you said that. The first one is when you were talking about acceptance, there's acceptance of the situation, but there's also acceptance of how you're feeling right now. Okay, so the acceptance has to be at all the point. And one of the problem I've noticed with my clients actually is not the emotions they have, but it's how they feel about how they feel. And so people are going to be, I'm feeling sad, what's wrong with me? Or, oh God, I'm always angry. This is driving me mad. Why am I always angry? I'm so frustrated all the time. It's frustrating me. So we need to change how we feel about what we feel, right? So if you want angry about being angry, what if you could be grateful? Because that's just the message you're receiving. Why are you angry? When you start looking into it, you say, oh, well, I'm angry because I'm not being true to myself. I'm not following my highest excitement. That's why I'm angry. All right, now I can do something about it. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that sort of came to me as you were talking. I don't think that toxic positivity is actually coming from the message that people are putting out. These are just tools, and you can, it's like you can change the channel if you don't like it. I think we bring toxic positivity on ourselves because we always think that somebody else will have the answer for us. And we forgot to look inside. What do we actually need in that moment? What is going to work best for us? What do I intuitively feel that I need? Do I actually feel right now to disconnect, curl up on the couch, grab some ice cream, and just be a puddle of mess for an hour or for a day? Or do I need to go for a run? What do I need? We don't take the time to pause and ask ourselves, what do I need right now? And it's not that hard. You don't need to be, a psychic to find the answer. But while we go, we Google, I'm a great fan of Google Doctor, but we go online, we Google, we ask all the experts, what do you do? Oh, you do yoga, you do meditation. What's that guy doing? And we also almost often end up doing nothing of it, but just having all this information. And that's where it becomes toxic as well.
I really like that, because I think what you're fundamentally talking about there goes to almost a underlying principle of self-awareness, right? That if it is toxic from our perspective as an individual perspective, if we become bitter or jaded because everyone else seems to be happy because they're just doing meditation or something like that, and we're not thinking about, well, what's the message we want to take in? Right. So there's that component of saying, actually, it is our responsibility what messages we take in. And there's also our acceptance of saying it's okay to sit in that negativity as well. But I do still want to push it back a little bit, just as a devil's advocate a little bit, right? Which is that in that case, from people who put out the message, if we're saying that toxic positivity is an overabundance of all these positive messages, just follow these 3 steps to a more positive mindset, then is there a role or responsibility in people, such as yourself, for example, in the wellbeing space, is there a need for you to be able to also share messages of saying, if you're feeling sad, this is a message just to say it's okay to feel sad. If you're feeling angry, go feel angry, and be and sort of balance, and not then adding onto it straight away. Now meditate and you'll feel better, like trying to short circuit it. Just kind of going, if this is the stage that you're in, sit in that stage, acknowledge it, feel it, it's okay. Do you think that we should be in some ways sharing some more of those type of messages as well to counterbalance?
Yes and no. So the first thing is, when people put out a message, I think it's really important not to say, this is what works. Do this and you feel $1 million, because when people do it and they don't, they think there's something wrong with them. And, you know, there's no solution that I bring to, you know, anybody or any client saying that's the thing that's going to work for you. It's, you know, coaching is a lot of, with experience, you start getting an idea for what works for this type of people or this type of people. But there's always an element where we need to try maybe one thing, two things, three things before we find, and maybe sometimes it's a combination. Maybe sometimes we create a brand new sort of tool for that specific person. So I think the message to say, hey, this is what has worked for me. This is what I've worked for some of my clients. It might not work for you, but if you haven't tried, it might be worth it. You know, but don't be discouraged if it doesn't work for you. That's the first thing. Then with the message of, hey, it's okay, you know, to be sad and to sit in your grief, etc. I think it's a good preamble. I still believe that it needs to be followed with something else, because it's not the right word, but I'm going to use that word. The sitting in the grief is not the final solution. It's more one of the steps. And if you say to somebody, it's okay to feel down and, you know, sit in your grief, then and that's all you say to them, what do they do after that? Because sometimes sitting in the grief doesn't give you the solution. It just allows you to give yourself a rest. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just, you know, go away by itself. Sometimes it appeases you and you face it and you're like, right, what I really need to work on it, and it will give you a solution, but sometimes it doesn't. And you want people to be able to go somewhere from there, and knowing that it's temporary. And I think that's a really important notion as well to have in the idea of whatever you're going to sit in and face is actually a temporary stage. And you're frozen. And I don't know, maybe I'm frozen on your end and I can't hear you anymore. Here you go, you're back.
I'm back. My apologies. My internet dropped out.
He's back. So yes, so the thing with emotions is not, the problem is not about having the emotions, is what do you make it mean when you have that emotion? You know, some people berate themselves for feeling angry. So what do you make it mean, and how long do you stay in it, and what do you do with it? Do you chew on it, or do you sit down and have a conversation with it? It's almost like, okay, anger, come up. You're up. What's your deal, anger? What's going on right there?
I think I really like this. I've got a question for you, but I also do want to say that anybody who's watching this stream at the moment, if you have any questions you'd like us to tackle, please do leave a comment below and we'll jump into it. I do apologize for my internet dropping out just before as well. My question back to you is, well, listening again to what you're saying, I think I do agree that just by saying to people sitting in it is no good, because I think there needs to, not needs to, but it's useful to show people the path forward, right? It's no good just to point to someone and say, you're stuck. It's like, great, okay, well, what do I do? But I think perhaps deeper within what you're saying, there's a point about saying, helping people develop that self-awareness and recognizing where they are as well. So whilst there is a path to take, it can be useful to kind of give people all the tools to go, okay, well, first let's identify where you are. If you're feeling sad, when it's okay, you don't have to jump towards this positive message out here, but it's also equally useful to kind of go, well, understand this is where you can sit right now. And that the next stage might also be here. And then the next stage might be here. But eventually, you can also get to this point too. And so helping people be able to almost map where they are across that journey can be one of the, I guess, ways out of, I guess, being in a negative space, but also allows for, allows us to combat toxic positivity in that particular way too.
Yes, you're spot on there. The thing is, when we put out an article or a video, we don't know who's watching and we don't know where people are at. So let's imagine that, from any emotion, negative emotion, to feeling good, there's 10 steps. Okay. And step number 10 is when you are in bliss and happiness. You might be talking to somebody who's at step 9, in which case, you can say just snap out of it. You just got one step. You can be talking to somebody who's step 1 and they have this whole thing. It's not going to be just snap out of it. So, and I guess that's the challenge with these platforms of talking from one to many, is you don't know the people you're talking to, where they're at. And that's where it comes back then to the people to also understand, is this message for you? It's not because you have access to the message that means it's for you right now.
I really like the way that you articulate that, because it definitely is a case of understanding that there's different messages at different points in time. And I think one of the things that I've started to do personally is when I do put out messages that I think have a particular message to it, I try to be aware of at which stage of people I'm talking to in some ways. Being able to not just go, here's everything, just do this and you'll be right, but kind of going, okay, well, this is the type of people who I'm talking to, but if you're also feeling here, that's also okay. I just want to say that that's okay too, and you can sit here, right? But these are some of the other pathways, and we can keep adding and layering messages on top of each other that complete that full picture. So I think that's definitely really appropriate, because I can only say that to come back to, again, toxic positivity, I do think it is a thing, but I think it's only a thing insofar as if we kind of just very crudely skim the surface of all these positive messages out there, and if we kind of shallowly think, oh man, just tell me that I can be happy just by thinking happiness, then I think we contribute to that toxic positivity.
Yeah. And, I love what you say, for people putting advice out there to define the audience. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed, all right, let me tell you right now, this is coming from your thinking. You're just going round and round and round and round in your head, and stop it. But, now this message is for people who are feeling sadness or grief or depression, and depression is something else, again, because you've got a medical side of depression, and then you've got an emotional side of depression. So, I can't deal with medical because I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I don't, this is not my realm at all. Probably need to have different names as well for it. But then, all right, if that's where you are at, rather than saying, if you're feeling blah, or if you're feeling all of these, then meditate, have some water, go for a run, because you can't be that broad. And the other thing that you were saying, it's also for, as you said, for yourself to realize where are you at, have this, this awareness of where you at. And the thing with toxic positivity, it comes in two ways. It can come through the articles that health professional, well-being professional are going to put out, but it comes also in one-to-one. So say we're having a call, we're good friends, you call me and you say, oh Nat, I'm feeling a bit down. Scott, you're just not thinking the right way. What's the gold in this, and look for this, and what are you grateful for? Right, every morning 5 things you're grateful for. What's happening there? And for you guys out there, if you catch yourself doing that, or if it happened to you, it's just a lack of listening skills. And when somebody tells you that, the best thing you can do is not give any advice, but ask questions, which is what you do in a coaching sessions, right? You don't assume anything. You don't assume where the person is at. You go, okay, well, tell me about it. And then you might say, oh my God, I've just got all this stuff to do. Okay, well, what has that happened to you before? What do you normally do when it happens? I'll make a list. All right, well, can you make a list? Oh yeah, I could make a list. All right, thanks, buddy, bye. you know, or it could be, I'm really depressed. I've got this stuff coming up. I, just broke up with my partner, or whatever it is. Okay, well, and then it's about finding empathy. Sometimes people don't want a solution. They just want to talk out and say, this is where I'm at. This is how I'm feeling. Just it sucks. And just doing that sometimes it's really good. But you also have to make sure that when you're receiving that, you're in a space where you can receive that, because it's a bit of unloading, and energetically, if you're not in a good space yourself, it's just then you're gonna be the one needing to call somebody in.
Absolutely. And I love what you just described. You've articulated it so well. And I'm going to wrap this up into my final thoughts on this, and I'll ask you for your final thoughts. If anyone has any quick questions, now's the time as well. So for me, I really like what you just said. That sometimes people aren't looking for a solution, right? And so my takeaway from this is that in our interaction with toxic positivity, that people do put solutions out there, right? And that's part of what people who are practitioners in that space do. Of course, that's what you're supposed to do. We do say, here are ways that we can help, right? And that can be a sea of what feels like solutions. But from our side, as the consumers of that information, we can also recognize that we contribute to toxic positivity by trying to feel like I have to take on all of those solutions, when that doesn't have to be the case. And so it's a combination of the two for me. I feel like it's one, being aware of what I take on, but also two, is as someone who shares information, being cognizant of who I'm talking to as well, and not trying to put too many solutions, and knowing there is a time and a place for solutions, but it's not all the time, and that there should be a breadth of that. That's my takeaway. What about you? What's one thing that you have taken away from our conversation today?
Defining your audience. If you're going to put some solutions out there, really put in, as a practitioner, put in the work to know, who you are actually talking to. What emotions are they feeling? What is the situation? And where are they at in their evolution through this emotional cycle? And make it clear when you write your article, this is who I'm talking to. If this is you, read on, and yet have this, it could help you. Not, if you're there, then for sure it's going to help you, because then it's really easy. Everybody's different.
Absolutely. Nathalie, thank you so much for joining me in this discussion today. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I'm everywhere. On LinkedIn, obviously. So that's Nathalie Gevinti. I'm on Facebook, and I am on Instagram. That's Nathalie_Stellar_Minds. My business is Stellar Minds. And I'm just an email or a phone call away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. For everyone else, thank you for joining us for the pilot episode of Open Minds. This is a bit of the tone of some of the discussions that, for me personally, I'd love to get into. I really enjoyed this conversation with you today, Nathalie. I feel like it's helped me just broaden where my thinking is, especially from a bit of that self-awareness perspective. So if you do enjoy this, please do follow me. So this is on LinkedIn, obviously, so you can follow me at @TheScottCo. And I'm hoping to make this into a bit of a regular session, a bit of a regular lunch and learn, but I'll continue to experiment as well. If you also have something that you want to discuss and you want to explore and let us both open our minds up as well, please hit me up, and we'll book you in for a discussion as well. So yeah, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Bye-bye.